Woohoo!
Hi,
Woo!
everyone. Michael, I know you're going to outdo me this evening. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wondered what's going on in the stars and with the eclipses we're facing and have just faced right now, then do we have the Life and Death Scorpio Eclipse show for you. Today, I'll be talking with Dr. Michael+Lennox, esteemed astrologer, best-selling author, and creator of the Daily Astro Alert about the twin eclipses, Scorpio and the Moon, and what in the world death and rebirth have to do with all of it. So welcome back to the show, Michael. Are you ready to shine?
I am. I am.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. All right. Before we dive right into things
Oh,
and dive into the fundamentals about the eclipse,
yes.
why, Michael, is everyone in tears or falling apart? Or why is the energy so crazy right now?
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about the feels in a very big way. Number one, we are in a water sign eclipse. Scorpio is a water sign. And so the water signs are more emotional in nature. It's an element that is emotional in nature. Mars, the planet of our embodiment, our physical experience. And so the choices we make, the decisions we sort of move through, and how we be in our bodies is in Cancer, the most emotionally tender sign of the zodiac in terms of personal emotions, right? So that's influencing us to be a little bit more teary and in the feels. Venus has been very active the last couple of days leading into this eclipse. So even though Venus is in Gemini right now, which is a mental sign, Gemini is Mercury ruled, it's about thought and intellect. Venus's activity yesterday and today has made our heart centers sort of lit up so that our hearts are open. Mars in Cancer makes the whole sort of time a little bit more tender, emotional, and more importantly, inhibited with our emotionality, because Cancer is a sign of inhibition. Cancer is a sign that says, if I'm emotionally tender, we shut the door, we come into our Cancer shell, and we hide out. So between that impulse and then the Scorpio energy of the full moon and the eclipse, I think, like, I walked into my acupuncturist office this morning. I've been away for the last week, and granted, it was a interesting trip. And he just said, "How you doing?" And I burst into tears.
And I had my moment yesterday, Michael. So I am there with you. What's interesting to me is what I'm hearing out of that is also opposition. I'm hearing heart open, wanting to let things flow, and then wanting to tamp
Yes.
it down and keep it under control,
Yeah.
which only does the reverse.
Correct. And I'll just say this, like, just as if I put my psychologist hat on for a second, that most of us have to learn how to allow feelings to occur. We push them away because we feel like that's what's going to be safe, that we're going to be more safe if we shove this emotion down into the basement, except that that's the cause of all dis-ease, challenge, and problem, right? And so we all have to learn how to allow feelings to just flow through us. And this is a good time for that because they're just undeniable.
So I want to get into the fundamentals right after this question. But if this week your theme song has been that's okay. It doesn't mean that you've gone completely nuts.
No. In fact, I would say if you're not feeling something like completely nuts, then you're not on the same planet as the rest of us. Everybody's might be a little different, but there are things about the setup right now that are so profoundly intense that nobody is escaping that it feels a little crazy right now.
Rue has felt crazy, and we've been calling it. And I'm like, Jessica, we shouldn't name it, but I think it was just after the last eclipse, and we are in this eclipse period. And I want to talk all about this.
Yeah.
We have experienced what we call Hana bears, our babies, sleep regression, where all of a sudden she's up in the middle of the night, she's crying, she's screaming, she's back asleep, then she's up again, where before she was sleeping straight through the night, and all of a sudden it ain't happening.
That's right. And this is, you can clock this, say, for the last couple of weeks, like maybe two.
Specifically even.
Specifically even two. Well, understand something, that this whole lunar cycle, like we'll talk about this eclipse and we'll talk about the transformative nature of it. I'm calling it a psychic surgery. We're going to unpack that tonight. And it might sound to your listeners or your viewers or your folks, hello, everybody, that we're talking about stuff that happens tomorrow. But we're not. We're talking about a peak that happens tomorrow of stuff that is occurring very certainly within this whole lunar cycle that started with the eclipse 2 weeks ago. That was a new moon. This was not just any old new moon, because it was also an eclipse. And if you remember, it was the second new moon in a row in the sign of Aries. And so it's kind of like, if you think of, you remember those, like, well, you're a little younger than me. I'm old enough for this. Like these little roundy things that they would have at parks that were like merry-go-rounds, not the big ones, but the little ones that you would, you'd get on it and mommy or daddy would, or the babysitter would like spin
Michael,
it.
I ended up putting my sister, and
Oh,
I don't know
dear.
about the hospital, but she ended up the only stitches she ever had in her life because she
flew
was on it,
off.
and I spun her
Got it.
around
Yes.
as the big brother. I'm so sorry, Elisa. And that's the theme music for this. It's her music. I am so sorry.
Yes. With apologies to your sister. The first new moon in Aries, because Aries is the startup cardinal sign. It's when the sun moves into Aries, we call that our astrological new year. It's the first sign of the zodiac. And so the passage between Pisces and Aries is like one big sort of slam on that wheel, right? Not enough to knock your sister off, but enough to get us sort of noticing, oh, shit, we're moving in a new direction. Well, then we had a second one at the 30th degree of Aries. Now, that was the push on the circly thingy bobby that sent us all flying off. So Rue, Hannah Bear, me, we've all been in a kind of amplified state since 2 weeks ago. This entire lunar cycle then has a thrust of energy that's bigger than your average eclipse season because of that second Aries push, and then the intensity of the Scorpio full moon setup that's peaking tomorrow.
Very cool. I have to get into the fundamentals, so forgive me, everybody, one more question, which is, I don't follow the news, what I call the negative wordless stimulation, but because I've got a mega audience, I want to know, what are the key stories? What are the pieces of the puzzle going on? I don't dive into any of them because I'm not going to follow any of the details. It's not, to me, important. I can hear what people are saying. But however, I wonder, with the nuttiness going on right now, once we come back to Earth after this time period, and I know you're going to say it's only if you do the work. However, can a lot of the dust settle at a higher, better, more positive level?
That's such a good question. And it's so interesting that you led into that question with the lens of the outside world, because my answer will be different for the outside world versus the inner world of you as an individual. So let's start with the individual. Absolutely. Do the work, do the dive. The work is uncomfortable this month because it is about allowing change to happen at such a deep level that we're talking about grief and feels from change that will feel like we're dying to self in some way. That's how intense. And Uranus is part of this eclipse, the great awakener with a lightning flash. We'll talk about that later in our time together, which means that anything can happen and changes will be mighty and sudden during this entire lunar cycle. So at the personal level, if something is suddenly removed from your life or suddenly added to your life and you work with it in the way that you teach people to do, that I teach people to do, we will all be lifted up to a higher level of our operating because we're being acted on. I'm calling this a psychic surgery. And we have to then trust that the surgery is beneficial. We're cutting out old consciousness that inhibits us from being our most magnificent selves, from receiving and giving more love in our lives. That amplifies our capacity to have a more graceful, more powerful, more abundant life. Now, the world at large, from my estimate, because I do watch and follow the news just enough to be able to make connections, not enough to be taken out by it, but enough to follow. And I would say there's enough happening in the next couple of years that, for my money as an astrologer, guarantee that we haven't seen anything like the worst of how chaotic and difficult it's going to get in the outer landscape over the next.
I don't like you anymore, Michael.
I'm so sorry.
I love you.
Yeah, I know that. Okay, I accept. So yeah, I think as a collective, especially in the United States, we have far more chaos coming, which is why it behooves us all as individuals to do the work that we do, so that we can be in a world that is, gone mad a little bit.
Thank you. All right. What are the fundamentals at play for an eclipse?
Okay.
And to me, how is it beyond pure magic? Because I'm a numbers guy, and I look at this and I say the statistics of this don't even exist.
Well, sometimes when I think about like the fundamental structures that create an eclipse, it's all about physics and moving bodies and angles and light.
And size, the exact
size, absolutely.
size.
So there are a bunch of happy accidents with our solar system.
I'm going to put them in air quotes here. Yeah. I'll put them in air quotes for us. Accidents.
So one happy accident is the belief of how the moon was created, that perhaps a large object crashed into the earth, melded with it, and then offshot a bit of it so that we have this moon experience. That's a happy accident, a big accident, but it gave us a satellite that's very close. It also tilted the Earth on an axis. And because the Earth got tilted on an axis, we developed, once the Earth began to form like land and water and civilization could land on top of it, we began to have seasons. Seasonality allowed civilization to be created because now we had markers through light and sunshine that told us, now it's dark, we fallow and we don't do anything. Now the light's returning, we plant. Now we harvest. So the idea that seasons allowed civilization to take place, then forces us to have to consider the other elements of how light and angles and movement sort of mark how we move through life. So eclipses become this wild thing that happens because I sometimes miss the math of this. It's something like the Earth is 400 times the size of the moon exactly, such that when we look up at the moon and we look up at the sun is bigger, but so much further away that it is exactly the same size as the moon.
Hello.
That's crazy.
Accident.
Yeah, accident. But exactly. Not
a
little bigger, not a little smaller, but exactly the right size to obliterate the light of the sun when the moon moves in front of it. As is this lunar eclipse, a full moon that we're having tomorrow. And then, of course, a solar eclipse new moon is, when the shadow passes from the Earth to the moon. But this idea of the solar eclipse is just insane. So now this is where I can't help you with any science, because this now becomes total sort of woo, that somehow consciousness works better on this planet because every 6 months we turn the computer off and we turn it on again, and that reboots the system, where the breaking of the beam of light that's relentless from the sun, the breaking of that light is like what happens when we shut down and turn on a piece of equipment that's not working so well. And in this equation, we're that piece of equipment that somehow gets reset when the shadow breaks. The shadow is always there. Like if we were looking at the solar system from above, and we would see all of this light flowing out in 360 degrees, when we look at the Earth, we would see the Earth as a bright little ball, and then we'd see this penumbra of shadow behind it. And all an eclipse is when the moon passes through that shadow, or when the Earth passes through that shadow as it's being created. So there's something interesting to me, again, in the wooey sort of way, which is, oh, the shadow always exists, just like in psychology. But every 6 months, we've got to move through that shadow. And
It
as a
presents,
result, we come out on the other side more whole and more complete, just like when we do shadow work in our lives. We got to move into the shadow. When we marinate down there, we learn something or two. When we come out of the shadow, changed.
It's everything, and it's your whole background, and shows you direction and joie de vivre in life, which is the inner world is the outer is the in, as above, so below. And specifically in this case, the dream world is the waking world world is the dream world, meaning this out here, this setup is a dream world, is a metaphorical world for everything going on inside of us.
That is right. That is right. And somehow, for me, at any rate, as an astrologer, by looking at something that is so big and outside of us, but feels like it impacts everything that's inside of us, then it is through astrology that I get to enjoy what you just described in a way that isn't baffling. I mean, it's a mystery, but it's still, I understand it because I have 30 years of looking at the movement of planets, then assessing how that impacts what my little body is feeling. That's all the empirical data that I need to have to know the veracity of astrology, because as above, so below. When those planets are doing that out there, I feel that in here. And if that's true for me, then it's true for everybody, even if there are people who won't be interested in this conversation, therefore they won't come forward to hear it. The planets are still moving on the outside, and every bit of that movement we feel on the inside of ourselves at the individual level, and we respond to that movement, whether we're aware of it or not. Your child crying for the last 2 weeks at night in a way that feels regressive to me isn't about regression. It's just about moving forward through an eclipse. She's like, wow, this energy is too intense. I can't rest. I can't sleep.
And the crazy thing that we'll get to in just a little bit is we're going to talk about psychic heart surgery, and she actually goes in for heart surgery next week. And that is just dumbfounding, the coincidence. For everybody, she's expected to be totally perfect. This is as minor as it gets. But the coincidence.
Yeah, the timing is epic.
Yeah. So what is going on archetypally, and what is going on from an energy or an amplification point of view?
Okay. Where should we start? So let's begin always with the moon, because it's a full moon. And so Scorpio moon is about death and rebirth. Right. In fact, when the sun moves into Scorpio in the fall in the northern hemisphere, we are moving, into the dead of winter. Right. So it's the Scorpio archetype that says, now we die. Now we lean into death. Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. And so we've got the Lord of the underworld in charge of this moment. And so what is the Lord of the underworld all about? Change and transformation. So from that perspective alone, nothing can stay the same when the cosmos is telling us, right now we have to die to self to be reborn in a new way. So that alone is an intensity that makes a Scorpio eclipse different than a Sagittarius or a Virgo eclipse. Now, where the sun is the conscious awareness portion of the eclipse, right? So now I'm going to talk about stuff that's about the outer world, what we can see and know and perceive. The moon is hanging out with our unconscious, and in a very deep, deep place, because it's like the unconscious plus the underworld equals Scorpio. The conscious awareness portion, which means what we're aware of and what we're sort of looking at in the big landscape, from which we're going to release and drop stuff, has the sun in Taurus. Taurus is Venus ruled. Taurus is about our values. Taurus is about what we desire in our hearts. Taurus invented the earth herself. You know, we're in the void of Pisces. Aries dives in, says, I am. And Taurus comes along and says, well, where are we? Let's create this thing called the earth. It's pleasurable to be here. It's yummy. It's got nice things to touch and see and do and be pleased by. So Taurus is about all of that, being pleased by what your life can bring you. So on a very mundane level, Taurus is the money sign, the cash and prizes sign. But we throw that aside and we go into the principle of love in the heart. Taurus invented love. You know, Venus also rules Libra, and that's where love becomes a relationship. Libra's about the mirror consciousness. You and I, we make a good pair. Let's love. Taurus is about loving being alive. And it's hard. It is hard to be here. It is hard to be in a body. It is hard to be a human being. And Taurus says it's worth it. Okay. So if Taurus is about love and Scorpio is about death, then any full moon has a release mechanism built into it where the unconscious, the moon, is sort of saying, hey, I'm ready to like open up the basement a little bit. And the sun sort of pours in and says, okay, good. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. And the moon goes, yes, I will. So why I'm sort of spreading all of this, you know, Taurus consciousness into our conversation is because the sun isn't alone in Taurus right now. In fact, 6 degrees that way is Uranus, the great awakener, the lightning flash. Anything can happen and probably will. 6 degrees is close enough for us to consider that Uranus is directly participating in this lunation. So you could say, oh, I think I ought to let go of that relationship. And Uranus will go, boom, gone.
Yeah. So Michael, 2 weeks ago, this fits into everything. We're at this beautiful rental where we're supposed to be through the end of the year. And we're looking for a more permanent place now, now that we're kind of being green lighted to move farther away from the hospital, from the Northeast.
Okay.
We get to go through this procedure, but
right,
barring that, so we're like, let's anchor and maybe we'll just stay here for a while. And Jessica, about a week ago, just a little over a week ago, one morning, because the emotions are flowing right now, said, this place is too small. At which point I went duck and cover. Yeah. A few minutes later, she dropped and broke a plate. And I went duck and cover again. And 15 minutes later, the text came in from the owners saying, we're so sorry. We're going to need to move back in later this summer.
Right,
hello.
Right on time, right in alignment. So there's more. Mercury is 6 degrees on the other side of the sun. Yeah. Mercury's always pretty close to the sun. He's never more than like 17 degrees on either side of the sun. But we're also just coming off of what's called the inferior conjunction, where the retrograding Mercury meets up with the sun, and we get sort of some awarenesses of like what the Mercury retrograde might be bringing to us. So that was about, I don't know, 6 days ago. I can't remember exactly the date, but last week we had a kind of aha sensibility. Why I love that Mercury is so close to the sun and still participating in this eclipse is that it's a full moon. That means we're doing work in the unconscious. Mercury's retrograde puts Mercury in the unconscious. That's my language for a retrograding planet, that when a planet is moving direct, it is consciously aware. When it starts to move backwards, it is visiting our unconscious mind. So to have the planet of thought and perception looking into the below while we've got this lugubrious Scorpio full moon ready to give us a surgery and a death rebirth experience, our minds are ready to go and do some work in the below because he's already there. Then you've got Venus, which we've already mentioned.
For 1 second. Yes. Is that also a reason that, I think it was the expression from my parents growing up, Michael, if your head wasn't permanently attached to you, you'd leave it behind. Yeah. That's what we're feeling right now, isn't it?
Yes. The idea of combining an amplified eclipse season, right? Because I want everybody to understand this is a bigger eclipse season than average, right? So we're in a extra amplified eclipse, which is bumpy, clunky, and will knock you on your ass. And solar Mercury retrograde, bumpy, clunky, knock you on your ass. Put them together, bumpy, clunky, knock you on your ass, and put the Mercury retrograde in the sign that's involved in the lunation. And then you have a, do I have my head on now? I hope. It's like, you're worried if I'm wearing pants. I'm worried if I have legs. You know, it's right. It's that kooky. So yes, extra bumpy, extra clunky, extra. Yeah. So back to Venus and Mercury. There's something beautiful about what they are expressing right now, because Venus is in Gemini, one of Mercury's ruling signs, and Mercury is in Taurus, one of Venus's ruling signs. That's called mutual reception. They are in each other's house. So why this is valuable for this moment is that Venus in Gemini allows us to be engaged with our emotional body, with our minds. Emotions are so challenging, I think, for people because we want to make sense of them, and they're not sensical experiences. They're not intellectual experiences. But at least when Mercury's in Gemini, we can use our intellect to understand our feelings more readily. And because Mercury is retrograde in Venus's sign, he's more interested in perceiving love because he's in the home of love. So the fact that Venus and Mercury are working so well together allows the transformative power of the eclipse to be that much more effective in terms of going into the below and saying, all right, what has to go? How's the structure down here in the unconscious? Where am I holding on to these old patterns? And we can do more good work in releasing old stuff that no longer serves us because of the way Venus and Mercury are interacting. The last thing I'll sort of throw into this is Jupiter, though he's still in Aries, is at the very end of Aries, which means he's very close to the north node of the moon in Taurus that is the generator of the eclipse, right? An eclipse happens when the sun is close to this north node of the moon in an angular relationship that causes the shadow to break. And so Jupiter's presence at the end of Aries nearby the Taurus stellium. In other words, he's close enough to be in the game. He's just wearing a different outfit. Like he's in the Aries outfit, right? He's not wearing the Taurus costume yet. But his presence near the North Node, Mercury, Sun, and Uranus is amplifying the energy because that's one of the things that Jupiter does. He just expands everything. So Jupiter's presence makes the wave bigger. But in terms of the value of such an eclipse at this time is that with the next new moon, Jupiter enters Taurus, and he spends like 13 months here from late May for the rest of the year and into next year. So that means that the things we release now and the intentions that we set in the next lunation, the next new moon and beyond, will be carried by Jupiter into Taurus over the next year plus and allow us to manifest our heart's desires more directly, more powerfully, because Aries is like, you know, Jupiter in Aries is sitting there waiting, saying, all right, what do you got for me? What do you got for me? What do you got for me? Because when I get into Taurus, I'm going to start delivering your heart's desire to you. And that's an incredible boon of this eclipse season, but we got to get through the release before we get to the juice.
What do we do? Thank you so much, Michael. What do we consciously choose to do, and how do we step forward into this release? Because it's probably more than just going to the acupuncturist.
Well, I think the first thing I want to say to people is that, like, if you're sitting in this room and they're a follower of yours, these are people who are probably on a conscious awareness path of some sort, right? Stands to reason. Yeah. So the one thing I want to make sure we don't do is to set people up to think that there is something specific to do. And if they don't know what it is, they're going to miss the opportunity. And it would be easy to grok that falsehood because maybe you don't understand astrology completely. It's like new to you. And I'm saying things that you understand, but some of it's Greek. And you're like, all right, I kind of get it. And he's kind of fun when he talks about it. But if you don't know astrology deeply, and I say, oh, there's a process, and it would be very easy to go, oh, shit, I don't know astrology. Therefore, I won't know the process. Therefore, I won't benefit. So let's use it in religious terms. If you're a Muslim at this time, pick up the Quran. If you're a Christian, read the Bible. If you're a Buddhist, go for a walk in the lotus garden. You know what I'm saying? It's like, do what you do rather than think there's something I need to know to do or I'll miss it. Right? So like, go ahead. Yeah, you've got an idea.
Leaning into what is.
Yes.
If you feel like crying,
cry.
Go for it.
That's right. If you feel like screaming, scream. If your mind is on fire, pick up a pen and paper and download the writing. If you are in emotional pain, set yourself up to have a good cry. Watch a movie that you know will bring it and then go all the way with it. If your body is challenging you, do something physical. You know, I do ceremony at every lunation. I think people like want to know, like, what is it that I do? It's like, I don't do anything that spectacularly interesting. I just know how this body likes to meditate and connect to energy. I'm a mover, right? So there's music that I work with, and I do a lot of moving meditation. And it's like, I'll do that for every eclipse. It's not like I'm going to make up a new one because of this eclipse being in Scorpio. I will do what I am drawn to do. Mm-hmm. and trust that. Now, I would encourage you guys listening, if you're not someone who is thinking about the patterns that keep you from connecting more intimately with others, then writing down ideas about the things that you are looking to let go of in terms of behavioral patterns that you are aware of. I think that the mind, which just needs some busy work, like the work is being done in the below, right? And the mind needs to feel like it's involved. So it's not a bad idea to write about the ways in which you know you block love, connection, vulnerability, and intimacy. And therefore, your mind will then have a sense of like what the patterns are that you're sort of releasing. But, you know, one of the things that I wrote about in my daily Astro Alert, which will go out tomorrow, is in the very last paragraph, I just say, allow, 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 which is sort of what you were alluding to, which is that feelings are going to come up. And the only way to find out what is next to do is to let those feelings fly through your body and allow.
Without judgment. And it's from a new thought perspective, I guess the farther we get away from the secret, the more maybe we're learning at an even higher level. But we are afraid what I think about is what I bring about. Therefore, I shouldn't allow those emotions to come up.
That is the worst thing that ever happened to humanity on a path, is this imprinting, this idea that our thoughts create our reality. It is absolutely true. Our thoughts create our reality 100%. But you can take that idea and pathologize your thinking in a place that is not helpful at all. Like your bad thought isn't going to create a bad thing. You need trillions of difficult thoughts to create an event that's, challenging. So it's like, you can't do that. Like it's like when I sometimes will have people say, "Oh, I'm doing my first workshop on Friday, and I'm so worried that if I think that people won't come, that will create that people won't come." And it's like, yeah, your thoughts are not quite that powerful. The people who are going to come are coming from billions of thoughts that you had 10 years ago that led to this moment that created the event. Your paltry little thoughts of isn't going to keep the attendance down. The attendance is what it is. So it's like, yeah, in fact, what a great time to let your thoughts just tell you what the patterning is. If you can be spacious enough in your thinking to be observant of it, so that the negative pattern that your mind goes to then becomes something that you can observe. Now you have an awareness of what the pattern is that you want to release, and let the full moon eclipse do its work.
I see this time period as being like a magnifying glass on a magnifying glass, or maybe even double that, this is the juice. This is the goodness. This is the time where we get to see what's hidden in the shadow inside of us.
That's right.
It's our aha moment if we choose it to be so.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say is that, like, there should be nothing new. Like, you should know who you are by now. It's like, I can't imagine that anybody's sitting here watching going, gee, I wonder where I'm challenged. Because it's generally the same pattern for each of us as individuals, right? That's why, like, when I talk about my ritualizing the full moons and the new moons, people, I think, expect it to be very different based on, like, what the chart looks like. But it's not. It's based on what I do that speaks to my body. So that if my mind is thinking periodically as I move through my life, oh, this works, this doesn't, I want to be free of that. Then at the full moon, because I know this, I know the thing I'm working on releasing already. I don't have to think of a new one. I know who I am. Then I trust the archetypes involved to do the releasing. And I make sure that I am honoring how I live my life, so that during the eclipse days, I'm not sitting on the couch smoking weed, watching movies. I mean, I might later, but right, that I'm taking advantage of the time to live mindfully and in my practice for a couple of days, as opposed to being casual or passive or not thinking and feeling into what process is. Like, it's time for some work. It might be a relaxing day on Sunday, but today and tomorrow, it's about making sure that I'm available for practice, for meditation, for moving meditation, for writing, if writing comes up, just to do anything and everything that lights this body up, because the solar system is telling me it's time for that kind of ritual.
Thank you. All right. Here's a word that I didn't know before tonight, Michael, and I still don't pretend to know a thing about it, except that it's powerful. Stellium.
Oh, it just means a gathering. It means more than it just means more than two.
Because you say this stellium, this gathering, then.
Yeah, you will understand this completely. If two planets are within 8 degrees of each other, it's called a conjunction.
Yes.
And if you got a third one, it becomes a stellium. So this one happens to have 5. Right? Uranus, the sun, Mercury, the north node, and Jupiter are all stretching across like a 20-degree swath of space, close enough that they each vibrate each other. So what's important then about the stellium, and why, and what we can get out of you asking this is that the sun is holding his sort of position in this full moon, but he's also amplifying with the awakener consciousness of Uranus, because he's right nearby, like in his ear. And then retrograding Mercury is saying, I'm down here, don't forget about me, and Jupiter's out there in the stellium saying, I can't wait to manifest next year. They're all in each other's ears, vibrating each other, making each other operate as themselves, but a little bit like each other. And that's the power of a stellium.
Is there something for this eclipse based on a 5-person party going on? that we get to do differently. Because I mean, I titled this Life and Death, and that's for a reason.
Yeah. You know, again, I think about like you and me, right? I'm here. I know my life. You're here. You know, people are watching this conversation. Like your experience with your child right now. It's like
Mhm.
that's a like shit going under the knife. I get that it's as good as it
Thank you,
can
Michael.
be,
Yes.
right? And I
Yeah.
get the presentation of I'm going to bring to my public this experience that I'm having, and but you're facing death. Now, I don't have your life, but I just came back from a trip where I did some plant medicine and then went the next day and spent 2 days with my family and 2 days with friends in New York while ripped open and raw.
I think
Um,
we can only say oy vey.
you know, and I come back to my life and I'm like, you know, I'm in this extraordinary eclipsey place facing my own version of what needs to die to self. And it doesn't compare to yours at all. Like there's just no commonality between how you are experiencing your life at this moment and my experiencing my life, except that we're both in transformational death rebirth moments. I'm going to ask you then the same sort of question. Then, like, let me sort of throw it back to you. What's your language for how each of us sort of meets such a moment
Trust.
like that?
This to me is the ultimate. I don't know if test is the word. I don't believe we'll be tested by the universe,
I'm
but
glad.
it's the
I'm glad.
ultimate opportunity
Yeah.
to say shit's going down for each of us in our own way. Now, I'm not a bring it on kind of guy. I don't have quite that. I trust in the universe, but I also trust that the universe has one heck of a sense of humor, and I don't need that. However, it's like after we learned, immediately after we learned, you thought you were staying here, felt good and stable.
Here, yeah.
Jessica grabs her phone and says, Michael, you're not going to believe it, and turns and it says 1111. And thus, that means the ultimate faith and trust and oneness with the universe. We are being cared for, protected, taken
That's
care of at this
right.
time.
That's right. So the alternative would be to spend more time railing against what happened because it fucks with your serenity and your plans and your, you know, or you can pivot quickly and allow and trust. And so in some ways, the thing that's going to bring you and you and you and you that experience of allowing faith and trust is going to be a different, sudden, unexpected thing.
Yes.
And then the measure of us isn't what happened, but how we respond to what happened.
And that to me brings us back to Venus and back to love, both individually, that individual love, and that couple's love, because to me, that's really important right now.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I have to sometimes write in the things that I put out there is to make sure that when I'm keep talking about love and the giving and the receiving of love, that people understand that I'm not just talking about romantic relationship,
Thank you.
right? That the world becomes our beloved when we dive into some sort of a deep practice. That's one way of describing what we're trying to generate within ourselves, a sense that I am an individual. I am in love with the world is in love with me. And sometimes the world hurts my feelings and pisses me off. And sometimes the world, my beloved, lifts me up like beyond my capacity to even understand how blissful life can be. And my job is to accept both, just like it is in a marriage, to accept the best, to love your partner for their qualities and in spite of some others.
you mentioned something here, and I'm relating it to Hannah Bear. Said the sun is in the Taurus mansion, as it is the retrograding Mercury, Uranus, the great awakener, of course, the north node that generates the eclipse in the first place. It says Taurus is where we learn to love being here in a body as a source of pleasure and delight. What Hannah Bear has learned in the last couple weeks. First, she started dancing. She's always been a dancer. That was how we got her to sleep in her earliest days. But like we put on Casey and the Sunshine Band, and she's just going back and forth and in her high chair. But she's learned in the last couple of weeks to clap. And so she's woken up in the morning. We've come in to check on her, and she's clapping to see us. It's like she's learning to love being here in this body.
In her body. That's right. And look what my body can do. Now, listen, I'm going to be 60 in August, and it's an interesting moment to start watching the body tell me that it's going to die soon, sooner than when I was born, right? The body starts to like, oh, there's the neuropathy, and oh, there's the, you know. Can you love being in a body even when the body hurts? Because the body can also clap.
I was supposed to go this week. Do I have anything on me? Oh, yeah, here we go. I was supposed to go this week, Michael, to the World Championships in swimming and cycling. I qualified. I am on, literally, I'm on Team USA.
I see that.
Now, I'm in Team World, but technically, I'm literally on Team USA. And of course, I'm not going because Hannah's having her heart procedure. She's supposed to be in Ibiza, Spain. Priorities, man. Right. And I'll be 53 this summer. And I'm loving, as I get older, I'm so much younger than you, but as I get older, and I'm not so much younger, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying each year. It's more challenging. It's more interesting. Yeah. Things are not as they used to be. I let go of my recent coach because he was working with 30-somethings-year-olds and Olympians. And I'm going, you're not understanding the recovery of a 52-year-old. But there's still fun in it and fun to be had, even if I'm achy, creaky, whatever.
You know, I think that there's so much pain and suffering that comes from just not accepting what is. This is why I talk about the body so much, because the body is in the present moment. It cannot be in tomorrow or yesterday. Our minds can leave the moment with great ease. In fact, the mind in the present moment is a rarity. And there's evidence about, there's, data that shows us that the most misery comes from arguing with life and reality and the world on its own terms. So that allowing things that are challenging and dark and shadowy is a source of happiness, not the absence of difficulty, because there's no such thing as absence of difficulty. It doesn't exist. I was going to say maybe when we sleep, but then we go into dreamland where things get even crazier.
And there's Hannah Bear is going to come out of this great. I know it. And I'm saying we have the most healthy, amazing girl. So many people do, but we're always biased towards our own child. And that's a good thing. That helps our child to survive.
That's right. That's how children make it.
So she's been doing great, and she's only going to do even better on the other side of this. And that's what I see with all of us. Is no darkness, no light. And this actually is here to serve us.
Not only is it here to serve us, one of the things that I love about astrology is that the energy will take us where we need to go, right? So people are going to come here and they're going to be like, well, what do I do? What do I do? It's like, well, I don't know. Just go where you go, like one step in front of the other. Your life and your psyche and your thoughts and your emotional body will take you right where you want to go. And if someone is sitting here listening to this tonight and you're really suffering and it's really difficult in there, that's your eclipse. That's what it is. Sucks maybe, but lean in the direction of it. Ask what this is. Go to the mirror, and as you're like in your insanity mind, go to the mirror, look in your eyes, put a hand on your heart and say, what's below this? What's underneath this thought pattern? And then wait, the unconscious will deliver an awareness, a thought, a feeling, something to write about.
It's interesting. Mary Fryer just had a comment here as we're scrolling through all the comments, and she was talking about loving the wisdom at this age. And I was thinking that there are what are these dating sites or this site or that site where it's about the physicality.
Yeah.
But I don't know. At a certain point, I fall in love with the wisdom.
Yeah. I wouldn't trade the wisdom for any of my youth back. Yeah. Not for a second.
You were talking earlier about the challenges people going through, and I'm wondering, and forgive me everyone for relating this to Hana Bear, but it just seems so related at the moment. You talk about this being a period of psychic surgery.
Yeah. What
do you mean by that?
Well, I refer to psychic
or psychic heart surgery.
Well, yes, I added heart because of Taurus, Venus's activity today. In fact, today, Venus and Jupiter right now are building into a sextile, right? So we are having this conversation while the planet of love and the planet of expansion are working really well together. So a psychic surgery becomes a moment of change and transformation that you aren't planning, but that you've put the money in the bank of your shadow work and your self-exploration and your thoughtfulness and your mindfulness and your ruminations and your therapies and your workshops and your retreats. And you put all this money in the bank of learning, growing, and self-investigating. And there are moments that come where something shifts profoundly. Not because of the Thursday or Friday that you're in, but because of the 6 months or 10 years of effort to prepare. But the big moments of radical change that you're not really doing, you're just allowing and you've prepared for, I call that a psychic surgery. That you come into a new way of operating suddenly, though you may have been working on it for a very long time. And the removal of the block to allow for the new graceful behavior is the psychic surgery. And an eclipse with Uranus participating, which can allow sudden amplified changes to happen so fast, is a setup for a psychic surgery for people who have been, putting money in the bank of change transformation, could be moving through some things that are surprising to them now. So I think I use that word because of my own personal experience. And when I'm writing my daily astro alerts, I'm tapping into the astrology, my experience, my friends' experiences, and my clients' and followers' experience. A lot of data floating around. And I am going through in this lunar cycle a kind of radical change that happened as a result of going back east, doing a plant medicine dive, spending a few days with my family and friends. That wasn't just a vacation. We called it a vacation, but it wasn't. It was way deeper than that, but not because of the plant medicine I did last week, but because of all of the efforts of the last 5 or 6 years of work I brought to the experience. Now, I'll add this. I did this work near where I was born, which I left.
Oh.
I went 3,000 miles away in 1987 because if I didn't get away from my mother, I was not going to be able to have a self-actualized life.
I love you, Mom.
We're
on the same. Yeah.
Right?
Colorado, here I come.
So there was something profound about being where I was born and doing a dive that connected to my literal embodiment that allowed me to like re-experience being born free from the wounds of my parents that were epic, that got attached to me when I was born, that I've worked my little ass off on freeing myself up. Right. So the shift that I'm experiencing, right? I had a text from a dear friend of mine earlier today, brought tears to my eyes, just from me texting the last week or two of reporting on my life. The response was, wow, the way you're shifting is really moving me. Because I had a psychic surgery yesterday, today, the other day, last week, that wasn't the result of this eclipse, but facilitated by this eclipse, made possible because of a lifetime of work, demanding that I heal this ancestral wound so that I could have an embodiment that was free of it. And it took about 55 to 60 years to be free of it. And now I get to sort of live in a level of freedom that I didn't know was possible. And there's an amplification of the growth this lunar cycle that I'm calling a psychic surgery. I hope that's clear.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I'm going to go from there. I want to go into questions from people.
Sure. Lovely. Yay.
Before I do that, this is why we're all doing the work. And I look at a critical mass of us. If we're doing the work that you're talking about, that I'm talking about, that everybody in the chat is talking about, I think we hit a critical mass where things begin to shift.
Well, that's why I do the work that I
energy.
do. Like, I don't know how to solve the problems out there. Oh my God. Like, I can't have those difficult conversations, you know, where people with different ideologies are going to somehow figure out how to have conversation. No, I want to slap people and be insulting and kill them off.
Oh no.
Right? I'm talking about my, you know, my own sort of so, but here's what I do know how to do. I know how to end the war inside of people so that there's less likely a chance that they're going to be bringing that inner fight into the world. So like, I have no problem telling people that I have these angers in me, but you will never see me behave from that place. Now, if social media had existed when I was in my 30s, oh, God help me. I would have been just typing what an asshole you are, and you're full of shit, and you don't know what you're talking about, and do you know how smart I am? Because I'm a human being. I have inside me reactions to people who are out there doing, I think, awful things in the world. But I'm not at war with myself anymore. And so I can contain those moments of rage, and they're brief. I don't stay there. I let them go because there's no value in inviting them to stay, sit down and having lunch with them. It's just like, oh, right, Michael, you're a human being. You have anger. Marjorie Taylor Greene is inspiring it right now. Let's just imagine choking her for 3 seconds and then we'll move on with our day.
On that beautiful note, let's dive into the questions. Michael, from Lee, I hear that manifesting and other oh, wait, where do people go for your daily astro alert?
Daily Astro Alerts. Michael+Lennox.com is my website, and there's a little tab that says Daily Astro Alerts. I'm actually really excited about this. These are deeply detailed daily descriptions of the next day's astrology that come out the day before. And I just set up a subscription series so that you can get this via text or email. Cool. Very fun. Michael+Lennox.com, cool. Daily Astro Alerts. Lee,
all right,
Lee has
and I'll ask you again at the end in case you missed it. From Lee, I hear that manifesting and other specific or targeted rituals are not a good idea to do during eclipses, either solar or lunar.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I have, that is something that is said out there. It is not a blanket rule, but there are astrologers who do believe that, who say that, and who embody and inhabit that. And I suppose it has something to do with the outrageous destabilization of energy in eclipses that they say it's not a good idea to be specific about what you're looking to manifest. I don't agree with that. I think we're big enough to contain the energies. I think that there are a lot of things in astrology that come from older times that connect with consciousness that doesn't exist anymore, that we just know more about psychology, the unconscious. Like, they used to believe that when a planet was near the sun, it was called combust, and the sun's power burned away the capacity of the planet. Like, so then if Venus was near the sun, there'd be no love because Venus is combust. Well, that's nonsense. But hundreds of years ago, we didn't know anything about the sun. Now we've been there. We've taken pictures of it. We're right up there. So our consciousness is aware of things that eradicate old superstitious ideas like a planet near the sun doesn't exist in its capacity until it moves past, except for this little tiny moment called Kazemi, which is just an old, right? So similarly, I think that the idea of don't be in manifestation during an eclipse is just an old consciousness that I don't vibe with. I respond to everything that I say astrologically based on what my body experiences and feels. And I have never, ever in 30 years felt like there was a bad thing that came from doing that kind of manifesting work in an eclipse. Now, I will also tell you, I don't manifest things specifically. I don't do that because I think that's a bad idea. I work to create the life that is perfect for my embodiment, but I don't like sit down and go, I want this and I'm going to work towards manifesting that. So I don't have any experience to speak into manifesting in that way.
I tend to go to generalities. I have general ideas of what I'd like, except I must be honest, this experience with Hana Bear, I am a kitchen sink manifester. Here is exactly what I want. And thank you for bringing me that or something even better.
Well, like, this is paltry compared to a child, but like the house I live in is quite spectacular and perfect for me. And
I know
has
that
a
came
list
across
of like,
magically.
and I manifested it, but how I manifested it didn't ever look like me sitting down and doing a picture of a house or saying house, house, house. It was more in committing to staying in a sense of alignment with my flow, knowing that I know what I want and desire. And I never stopped thinking about it. I never stopped thinking about soundproof, southern exposure, white. So in that regard, I did manifest specifically, but I never did that in a new moon or a full moon. It wasn't, it was just part of my trusting life that I could align myself with my desires using my mind and my feeling body. And lo and behold, a year and a half later, this house came along. But it wasn't done with like, something that looks like a manifestation attempt. So
Thank you.
To round out the answer to Lee, it's like, I treat every eclipse just like I would treat any new moon and full moon. And that works for me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Next question. While I'm doing that, we seem to be having some internet lag. So I'm wondering if you have any windows open or browsers or things that we can close. I don't
No,
even
there's
know
nothing.
if
My
it's
browsers are down. I'm Ethernetted in.
it's universe.
Yeah.
Universe is
And
playing
I
with
will
us.
say that this PC has a tendency to sometimes get a little resource heavy after a while. And so it may be that. But the only thing I can do to fix that is to leave.
No, we're not going to ask that of you. But Leslie is going to ask, Michael, what is the number one thing to do to keep ourselves sane? And love from Canada.
Well, I mean, my answer to that is always going to be have a relationship with your breath. Breath regulates everything. And so when we are dysregulated, breath will bring us back to center. And in that crazy, insane sort of time, I think breath will be your friend. It's getting worse, Michael.
I can see that. So we've we've got choices. Either we wrap up soon, or how long does a reboot? Because I can talk for a minute if it reboots. We don't lose you.
No. We're talking about like 10, 15. I mean, like it would be like
No.
10 minutes. I'd have to close everything down and come back. I mean, do you want me to do that?
If it's 10, 15 minutes, no, that's not worth it. Let me scroll through here. I'm going to take a look at the questions and see if there's one more question above all questions that we get to. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay, so let's see. Forgive me, everybody. Da, da, da. Forgive me, everybody. I'm going through as fast as I can. These are brilliant questions. I'm going to go back to a really fun one here. From Susan, both Michaels. Do you feel the sun, earth, and moon as living beings? I do now and already feel their power of alignment. I choose life.
100%. 100%. Father and mother. Simple answer.
And
Like,
couldn't agree more. And that was such a short answer. I'm gonna pull one more out of you because it worked.
Well, another question.
It was
well,
it
while
was
you're
working.
looking for the question, I'll say a little bit about that. We're not separate from the earth. We are biological and alive, and we were born of the earth. She is our mother. We can't have the earth's life without the sun of the warmth of the sun, and that's our father. So yeah, 100%.
Brilliant.
And that's why I get excited about our galactic identity. I think about our galactic identity often. Because as a galaxy, in our galactic neighborhood, the solar system is a being. And then inside of that being, we're the life. Mother is the earth, son is daddy, and we live in the Milky Way.
I love it. From MacB, is there such a thing as free will for us humans with all those planets affecting us?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's why we have the idea of free will. Like that concept exists as a thing to talk about because the concept exists. We have free will. And this is the great blessing and the curse of being alive and in a body, because we make choices that serve us and then we make choices that don't serve us. And, that's free will. And so planets don't cause things. I think that a question like that might be coming from an idea about astrology that says the planets cause things. And if I have free will, I'm going to do something different. But that's not it at all. The planets do not cause anything. They reflect, and we reflect them. So as we move and do things, we're just reflecting the energy that we're working with, and the movement of the planets describes that energy. So from that perspective, it might sound like I'm saying we don't have free will, but we do. I move right or I move left, and the energy says I can move. I choose right or left. Now, if I go right a little too far, I'm going to fall over the railing and into my great room below. That would be a free will moment that didn't serve me well. And the instability of the moment is unstable enough that I might fall down my stairs, which actually happened once before. But you know what? I'm going to hold the railing.
And I'm going to walk out with Hannah Bear out on our dock here. And with the winds that there have been lately, I'll walk out the dock and say, you know what? No, I don't feel like it.
It's too windy.
And I'm going to turn right around.
That's right. So yes, we have absolutely free will within parameters. The parameters are life on life's terms, where the planets are, what they're doing, other people that push back on us.
This leads perfectly into Denise's question, and I love, maybe it's group consciousness here. All of a sudden,
right. All of a sudden, we're clear as a bell. I mean, loving that.
From Denise, How does astrology help me to live a more conscious life?
You know, let me say it this way. One of the things that gets said to me in readings all the time is, oh, thank God. Meaning, I describe the energy that somebody ought to be experiencing, and they go, oh, so I'm not out of my mind. I'm not at fault. Like I'm not doing it wrong. It's like, no, this is just the right. So that idea lives in my experience of astrology, that when I don't understand what I'm experiencing, and then I go to astrology for the context, suddenly I have language for what I'm experiencing, um, such that I don't just feel like I'm untethered or out of my mind or too emotional or overly reactive. I can look at the astrology and sort of say, that movement is why I'm feeling this way or thinking that thought or about to make that choice. And so without that, I would think that I was losing my mind. And with it, I have a self-investigatory tool that allows me to know when it's time to dive more deeply or when it's time to move away from something. You know, when I was younger, I had a mythology that I was sick all the time. Now, why that was is that my father literally was sick all the time. He had an immune condition called common variable immune deficiency disorder. He had rickets. He had malabsorption syndrome. He had soft bones, and he died at 62. So as my father's son.
And I'm pausing you here, Michael, because
Yes.
you're 60 now. You just
No, that's
visited
right.
home.
Well,
So
59.
clearly, this is in your consciousness
That's right.
now.
That's true. Good point. Well done. When I got astrology in my lens, I suddenly saw that every time I felt this way that I was calling I'm getting sick, I would notice that the energy on my chart was bigger than, say, tomorrow or yesterday. I was like, oh, this is just energy. I'm not sick. I'm just sensitive to energy. So now I have a word for it. I call it moon sick, and I take every full moon off just in case. So let me make one more point, though, to extrapolate beyond this. The same can be done with psychological challenges, relational problems and patterns, the way I respond to criticism, or, you know, any of the things that one might investigate or self-investigate. Astrology gives context for things that are mysterious to my experience, and then I have greater insight to who I am.
Very cool. A complete dovetail. And then I want to get to Nancy's question here. I used to do, particularly when I lived in Boulder, Colorado, pretty cool. After my NDE, I saw colors differently and light differently. And I did all these sunrise and sunset pictures that were just stunning to me. And I used to chase around the full moon to take pictures with the full moon and rock formations and different things. But what I learned very quickly, going back to your term moon sick, is, for me, the rule became you don't mess with a full moon. Take a few pictures if you want and get the hell away from her. You get it.
I do. Well, you don't mess with energy. I mean, energy is undeniable. And that's another thing. It's like if I have a desire and the energy of the day says this is possible, that's not, then using astrology allows me to release the self-judgment I might have if I didn't have an astrological sort of corollary to what I was experiencing.
Thank you. So I'm going to always leave on a light, positive note. So we're going to go a few more questions here. I know we've got a hard cutoff in about 10 minutes here.
Yep.
So Nancy asked a question that I want to be able to bring back into the light here. And this has to do with, to me, with doing the work. He, meaning you, from Nancy, mentioned more difficulties in the next few years. Yeah. Why?
Well, I'm just getting comfortable talking about this.
Not to drop the bomb on you, Michael, here.
All right. No, it's my
Careful
job.
of your words, Michael.
It's my job. When outer planets change signs, big things happen on the planet. Because the planet is in crises, big things mean destructive experiences, right? That's just no way to deny what we've been seeing over the last, 100 years or so, right? When Pluto left Sagittarius and moved into Capricorn, Capricorn rules structures like banking and housing. That's a Capricorn consciousness. That's when we had the recession and the housing market blew up. That was an outer reflection of a planet, a big heavy hitter, changing signs. So Pluto's changing signs right now. It's moving into Aquarius, back out, into Aquarius twice this year and 3 times next year. And we're already seeing shifts in AI and things that are happening with technology. And so we have these 2 years of big change on the planet because the planet of change is going to go back and forth. So this has just started. We ain't seen nothing yet in terms of the more breakdowns in technology and community and things that Aquarius represents by Pluto moving back and forth this year and next year. In 2025, and this is what makes me the most concerned, in 2025, the planet Neptune, which is the great spirit, Neptune carries spiritual connection. And for us on a path, it's about our spiritual practice, connecting to the all and the divine. But, astrology is for everybody, even people who don't pay attention to it. And so religiosity is also a Neptune thing. And the planet that guides religiosity is going to move in 2025 into Aries, the sign of war. There are millions of people in the United States of America who are well armed and ready to fight with their arms against a perception of a tyrannical government. We've got an election coming up in 2024 that could set up people on the planet in the United States to be very angry and ready to do violence. We're already seeing an amplification of shootings in America, even beyond where we've been. Like the amplifying of that is epic right now. And I think that's going to get even worse when Neptune moves into Aries. I don't think there's any way for me as an astrologer to not talk about this, though it troubles me and it's against my desire to be light, because I know that how I'm saying these words is not how they're being heard. These words are going to land on a lot of people, inspiring fear. And I don't want to inspire fear, but I'm not going to hold back what I see. I also believe in our resilience and our ability to move through what's coming and transform it, but we've got some dark days ahead before we rise up.
When people talk, and I've had Mo Goddard on the show several times, and he was a head of Google X years ago, and now has written about the challenges with AI. When I look at the challenges of AI, or I look at these challenges that are coming, to me, it all comes back to one thing. The shift is within us.
Yes.
What you teach AI is what you're going to get. What you
right.
see in the out of the world
That's
is what you're manifesting. When we talk that word manifestation, Pierre used the word super manifestation from the inner.
Yep.
So we can go to a place of fear and we can step on the gas and drive right into the shadow and go, wee, which is not fun. Or we can pull back on that stick.
That's right.
We can point to the heavens and step on, mash on that pedal with everything we've got. It doesn't mean it's not going to be a bumpy ride. Go watch Star Wars or something as you're going into hyperspace.
It's going to be a bumpy ride, but it comes back to, for me at any rate, it comes back to this thing of like, I don't know how to help that not be so difficult, but I do know how to help people face calamity, difficulty, fear, with more grace and more ease by turning within and saying, well, where am I at war with myself? Can I heal those wounds so that I can then face a world that does seem to have gone mad and be a participant bringing love instead of fear and hate.
And because, well, I can go to my first NDE, whatever you want to say about, well, that's so cool. Cancel, clear, release. I'm broken. I'm on a trail. I may never walk again. I may lose my leg. I have a choice to make. How do I wish? Okay, yes, everything happens for a reason. If you choose it, what am I going to do with this experience? Because if I let myself go down in the sewer, I'm losing my leg at least. So what am I going to choose? And so this can be, in a way, not easy, not pretty, I'm not making light, but a beautiful experience for a choice individually and collectively, all of consciousness. What do we choose to do with this experience?
You know, I worked for a long time with people on the cancer journey, mostly with dreams and dream interpretation. And one of the beautiful things that I got to really be in the presence of is watching somebody go from, why did this happen to me? To, now that this has happened to me, who am I going to be? And that's what we all have to do with being alive at this time.
Thank you. Last question, and then I want to know one more time where people can go, and maybe any last words you want to wrap up with. From K. Chris, do you have, and you may have already shared them, any words of wisdom for us as a community to help move through all these changes?
Well, you know, I love that you brought up the word community, because it is through community that individual work ripples out into the world. Right. So I can calm the war in my own heart so that I have more grace. But until I bring that calm and that heart and that love into community with others and share it and support others and receive support from others, then my isolated grace isn't doing the world any good. But when we take what we're learning and growing and expanding on the inside and then share it and receive in community, then we're actually doing the work that combines the inner work with an outer change. Woohoo! Woohoo!
So where can people go? That was beautiful. Where can people go, Michael, one more time to find your work, to find the Daily Astro Alert?
Michael+Lennox.com is my website. The Daily Astro Alerts, like I said, I'm excited about the new text version. You can find out more about that. I have a class that starts on Saturday that I'm really excited for. I do these classes called Going Deeper. It's sort of shadow work. It's in the direction of self-investigation, but we use myths and fairy tales to do the contextualizing. These classes are so juicy. This one's using Sleeping Beauty and Selkie. Selkie is the myth of the Scottish, it's a Scottish myth of the seal woman who gives up her pelt in order to have human love, similar to the Little Mermaid, who gives up her mermaidishness to experience human love. That's a myth that allows us to take a look at things like all the things we do to sell ourselves short to attract and keep love, or imposter syndrome, where we're not really being who we are and we're afraid of, our authenticity. Sleeping Beauty allows us to look at the ways in which our early indoctrination into romantic love sort of screw us up in relationship later because it's an impossible fantasy. And the whole sleeping element of Sleeping Beauty is all about like the ways in which if we don't wake up, we can't have masterful lives, right? So it's a 4-week class. We use the tales to sort of do some self-investigation. There's deep homework questions to answer, alternated with like guided meditations that inspire. It's 4 classes with me. We get a little one-on-one time at the end of classes with me. I'm excited. So Michael+Lennox.com under classes will take you to Going Deeper, and we get started on Saturday.
I love that. I'm listening. I'm going, I want to find out. This sounds cool. So you've got something really special, Michael, and I'm going to encourage everybody to go check it out.
Thank you so much.
In like 10 seconds are left, because I promise I'm not going to keep you. Any last words that you want to share with people?
Yeah. Would just be, words we've already said. allow. If the feels are up, dive in. Keep your journal nearby because Venus and Gemini will give you words about the feelings you're having. Don't shrink back from having these couple of days feel really intense because there's something for you in it, but you won't find it unless you dive in the direction of the juice. Woohoo! Whoa.
Thank you so much. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, dive in the direction of your own juice. You're going to find something special on the inside. And above and beyond all else, shine bright this eclipse season.
Woo.
Every day there's a new horizon. Birds keep on singing, earth keeps on spinning. Time to toss any fears that rule you. Dance to vibrations, no limitations.